All right.
Okay, I think everyone is settled and ready for you to start. Um,
Okay.
if you let us know if you want to like hear from us or you want to just like jump into whatever presentation you're thinking, whatever would work best for you.
Um, I can hear from you all first, and well, I can introduce myself. How about that? Hello, my name is Jocelyn Clark. I am a descendant of Hickory Hill Slave Plantation. My ancestors grew up in Hanover County, Virginia. My grandfather was very popular in and around Ashland. His name was Jim Cash. I currently reside in Silver Spring, Maryland. I am a genealogist. I am a historic site preservationist. Um, work primarily focused with chattel slaves. Um, I'm honored to speak with you all today in reference to the history of Hanover County, Virginia. Um, Please understand that uh, historic research is still ongoing in that space. Um, but I would love to hear some questions from you all, or even from you, Mariah, more information about today's event.
Yeah. Okay, so I can get us started and then I guess um yeah, so just to introduce who's here. So we have a cohort of we have a bunch of people here. Some of the people are from a cohort that I was in called the Radical Municipalism cohort. And people from this cohort have come from all over the country. Um and are all kind of part of different kind of social movements in their different localities. And so we're coming together to just reflect on our different social movements we're involved in and how to build stronger movements and share approaches across the network that we're building nationally. And then we also have a group of people who are different leaders across Richmond in terms of different projects, including like Palestine solidarity organizing work, mutual aid work, abolitionist work, and all other kinds of social justice projects and initiatives. Um, and we also have our amazing neighbors here, Martha and Scott. And yeah, that's kind of who's in the room right
All
now.
right. All right. All right. All right. Okay. So nice to meet everyone now that we've been formally introduced. I can share with you some of the history of Hanover County, Virginia, as far as um, it it pertains to the enslaved community. I am uh, Martha and I actually met before several times, and hello to you, Martha, if you're there. We've met at cleanups that we've done at Hickory Hill Plantation. Um, there are upward of 200 plus slaves that are buried at Hickory Hill Plantation. Um, Trying to see if I was able to share my screen with you all so I can show you a video if possible um, in one moment. But I am a descendant of that space. The plantation was owned by a man named William Fanning Wickham. He had a brother who also married a Carter daughter. The two Wickham brothers married two Carter sisters from Shirley Plantation, and given to them as a wedding gift or dowry was land and some slaves. Um, the first crop are at Hickory Hill, and there were another at what we know is formerly Rocky Mills Plantation. Um, there are a number of slave cemeteries scattered around Hanover County, Virginia, where preservation is needed. Um, Hickory Hill, fortunately, has undergone that work, but there are others. In addition to that, there are also burial spaces of former slaves established post emancipation as well, scattered in and around Hanover County, Virginia. I know Martha inquired about her family's history, um, and I know of a plantation called Holly Hall that is associated as well, Martha, um, with your family, that it sits adjacent to Hickory Hill. And again, ongoing preservation is needed in the spaces to preserve that history. Do you have any questions for me before I possibly play a video?
More about genealogy work, like how did you find yourself getting involved into genealogy work, and what would you recommend for someone trying to learn more about their lineage?
History. Sure. I got into genealogy about 17 years ago. My family, my grandmother was very active um, in Jamestown. She worked to preserve the schoolhouse, the only standing schoolhouse, educating former slaves on land that was gifted to them by the Wickhams. Her and her sisters and a bunch of other citizens worked to preserve that for me was the start of genealogy. Um, and after a recommended course from a former professor, I started taking classes. What I would recommend for an individual who is interested in learning more about their genealogy, be prepared. Um, if you are a descendant of slavery, to hit an 1870 brick wall. But there are ways of dismantling that brick wall. Um, it's tedious, but it can be done. In addition, um, for my work, identifying burial spaces is not difficult either. Identifying those sacred spaces of our ancestors, that is also not um, a difficult task, as one may think. Um, so I do believe that more channels should open up for individuals to be able to connect and preserve when those spaces are identified. Um, I'm hopeful that that conversation um, can be had in Hanover County soon.
Thank you.
Sure.
We have one more question.
Sure.
Hi, Jocelyn. Thank you for speaking today. I'm Gabby. I just wanted to ask, I missed just kind of bit of what you were saying of what were the names of the plantations around this area? I know you were talking about Hanover County specifically and some of the um cemeteries and burial sites that you were talking about. But if that's in your video, then we can watch the video.
Well, it's not. That part isn't. I can name a few. That's actually a great question. There is currently, for instance, a data center that is being built in Hanover County, Virginia. That data center actually will be on the former site of a plantation called Blenheim or Poplar Springs. It was the home of the Winston family. Philip Brickerton Winston was the clerk of court for Hanover County, Virginia. Very prominent founding family of Virginia. And he owned that plantation. The Winston brothers all had different plantations, respectively. Nutshell was one. Um, and in fact, there was a scene at one of these plantations, a daring scene involving Martha Ann Fields and her children's escape from slavery. Um, they were enslaved at Nutshell Plantation, and when they attempted to escape, I believe the Confederates had burned the bridge. She had to beeline to Hickory Hill Plantation, where her brother John was the slave driver, and he was enslaved there. He had a boat, and he was able to free Martha and her children. One of her sons went on to be the first African American graduate of Cornell University. The other, James Field, he went on to be a senator. So those are two stories I know from plantations in Hanover. The data center will sit on Poplar Springs. Another plantation in the area, we have North Wells and South Wells plantation. They neighbor. Hickory Hill. Uh, Let me think. There are quite a few. I mean, so many. Yeah, so many.
Thank you. I
Sure.
hope I'm helping Maria
Yeah, Gabby is
with some of the
involved.
research of
Yeah.
the land too.
Yeah, so hopefully we can all connect soon.
Yes. All right. So let me see if I'm able to pull up some visuals for you all. Just give me one moment. See if I can share my screen. I'm unable to share my screen. Maybe you can assist me.
I can probably, let me see. Okay, I'm gonna make okay. You should be able to now.
Okay, perfect. One moment. Show you a brief video. You ever wonder what are some things that you find in a historic African American burial space? How about I ask my AI bot? Hey Ziggy, tell me about periwinkle and burials.
From horseleaf.com. Since the periwinkle flower symbolizes affection and devotion, it is often planted on graves as a sign of memory and love, strong feelings. Headstone designs were intended to be uniform, generally 4 to 5 foot tall tree trunks for adults and stacked logs or smaller trees for children.
And when you see these trees, they usually indicate family burial plots, and they were used to replace headstones.
Cedar or yucca plants were also used as grave markers to symbolize the life that persists even in the face of death, a tradition that can be traced back to Haiti, where African and Christian beliefs mixed. Hickory Hill, located in central Hanover County just north of Richmond, Virginia and a short distance east of the town of Ashland, was one of the largest plantation farms in Virginia with ties to Shirley Plantation. Shirley Plantation is an estate on the north bank of the James River in Charles City County, Virginia.
Hey Ziggy, what's the oldest existing business in North America?
As North America's oldest business, the Shirley Plantation in Virginia was founded in 1613 and has been owned by the Hill family since 1638.
All right, were you all able to hear some of that video or that video?
Yes.
All right. All right. So what you saw in that video were scenes from the Hickory Hill plantation. And as you heard in the video, the slaves buried in that space um, came from Shirley Plantation. Took a group tour there about a year and a half ago. Um, and upon research, I have been able to trace those slaves back another 75 years through wills of the Carter families. And I found out that they were primarily working pre 1806 at Hardin's plantation, North and South Wales plantations as well. There were several plantations owned by the Carter family, and I have been able to gain information about the enslaved of those as well. I have a wealth of information, and again, um, my studies are ongoing. I am preparing myself now currently to do research on a community built by former slaves of both Poplar Springs and Hickory Hill Plantation. It's called the Butter Road Settlement. Um, But yes, the scenes that you saw from that video were from inside of the Hickory Hill slave plantation. As of today, I know of 8 of my personal family members where they're buried inside of that cemetery. That would be Annie Winston, her husband Philip Winston, and their 6 children. She is my 3rd great aunt, and she died in 1919. She was born enslaved at Hickory Hill Plantation. Are there any other questions you all have?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you doing? Thank you so much for
Hi.
sharing information. It's really powerful stuff. I think it might be a 2-part question, but you said that periwinkle and cedar were used as heads. So, you know, are there any archaeological like, you know, digs like to find cemeteries around cedars and periwinkle going on? And do you know of any laws that would be able to kind of make that space like a memorial or like a cemetery if you know, burial sites were found there?
Very good question. So, depends on the locality, number one. Now, in the state of Virginia, 2024 present time, land ownership, anyone could have a cut of land that happens to have human remain, right? So I know that preservation work can be done if the history of the space is established, right? Now, when it comes to periwinkle, that is a known plant used by former slaves to, I guess, to identify the space as being a cemetery. That was a very prominent plant that was used, and it kind of overtakes anything when it's planted. So if you see like very lush periwinkle, be very aware of your surroundings, because that's possibly human remains very close by. Now, do I know of any current digs that are happening? No. When it comes to digging, that is can be very complex. I wouldn't recommend to dig if you believe that there are any human remains. I would try to alert, the local county or historical society. If the history of the space is, possibly linked to chattel slavery, I would see if there is an existing descendant community within, maybe a 10, 15-mile radius of that space. I would just work to preserve, but I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Jocelyn.
Sure. Yes.
This is Martha Ellen. I'm Martha's daughter, who you've worked with.
Yes.
It's good to meet you virtually. So I guess my question is, y'all have had to deal with landowners who are very combatant. Like, how would you recommend people handle folks who want to work with you on this stuff?
Okay, so let me make sure I have your question. You want to know how would I handle working with someone as far as maybe genealogy is concerned?
Well, more landowners who aren't willing to let you onto the property.
Wow. Okay, so landowners who aren't willing to. Again, if the space is historic in nature, I would work, I would try to rally again with maybe the county and through historical societies versus trying to maybe go one-on-one with, with the owner. You don't want to create a combative situation, but if you know that the space is very historical, then you would want to alert, county officials and try to work that way. Um, yeah, that may be your only way. But that was a great question, though.
I'm Jocelyn, Zachariah. I introduced myself earlier. I'm living here currently.
Yes.
This is amazing. I'm so grateful for you. I started having a relationship with this about 4 years ago, going on 5 years, and something subliminally made me feel like there is a lot of power and potency and presence here. So it's helpful to hear you fill in some of that sense. And I'm curious actually about like after the 1860s, living in Ash, I do notice that there are Black homeowners, but it's definitely far and few in between. And from my conversations with other neighbors and also from the person who currently owns this kind of 90 acres of land, my understanding is that a lot of post Civil War, post like the emancipation of the enslaved people in the US, the Wickham family or whoever at that time was the plantation family deeded land, deeded subdivision basically of land to the former enslaved people to have a workforce essentially to continue to I'm curious about that history onward. One, is that accurate? I've heard it now from like Ken, who's an older fellow, a couple houses down. What was Ken's wife? Martha?
So that actually is a great question. So, it's funny. I have something here I can share with you in one moment. Just give me a second to pull it up for you. It is an article from, I believe it's 1919. It is a deed between, it's a celebration actually of the deed that was given between the Wickhams. And enlisted in the deed are the Hewlett boys. The Hewlett brothers are not only descendants of Hickory Hill Plantation being slaves, but they are the children of a woman named Bibiana Hewlett and a man named Nat B. Pretty. He was the overseer at Hickory Hill for more than 30 years. There was a very great working relationship between the former slaves of Hickory Hill and the Wickham family. I have a number of articles here that I can share, trying to find the one in particular that speaks to the deed transfer. But yes, as far as Black landowners is concerned, after 1860, there were a number of former slaves who were purchasing land in and around Hanover County, Virginia. I know of a settlement later known as the Hickory Hill Club, right off of 54. That was one community. Another community is Jamestown. Another is Canaan. Another was Middletown, which sat right adjacent to Providence Baptist Church. These were all communities built by former slaves of Hickory Hill and other plantations adjacent to. And then, of course, individuals moved away and from Hanover County, but a good chunk of them remained. Trying to find that article for you.
Yeah. While you're searching, just to say, I, along with farming, work with the Young Farmers Coalition, which is specifically kind of engaged with the fact of Black land loss and trying to regenerate Black land ownership. I don't really, even though I'm an employee of that organization, I don't fully believe their strategy and their approach is going to be effective. But I am really curious about the process of Black land loss here, because again, I don't see the remnants of that, like Black ownership of the land. I see the condominium and the kind of sprawling suburb that was the Hickory Hill plantation. So I'm just really curious about what were the processes and procedures that ultimately led to what seems like the loss of Black land ownership here.
There were a number of things that happened, some of which aren't pleasant. But there is still a number of individuals who are Black landowners in and around Hanover County, for sure. But the land at the present time, is it being utilized? The possibilities of, communities of color being able to be built on this land, that is a possibility. If we trace descendants today, there are a bulk of descendants of chattel slavery who are living subsidized housing on vouchers, things of that nature, and substandard housing present date. Is there a possibility to reverse that through, I don't know, maybe agricultural grants or through the voucher itself, right? Possibly. But what would that look like for the Black land owner, or what does that look like for a owner? So these are conversations that I'm having, my organization has. That was a great question that you asked. Yeah. And I am so frustrated with myself, guys. I literally pulled this up for you, had it here, bookmarked, and I don't know what I did with it. It was a wonderful article. It's from a newspaper speaking about the celebration at Providence Baptist Church between the Wickhams and the members of Providence for gifting them the land to build the church and the schoolhouse. And also, again, after in the 60s, I believe it was 1960 exactly, another acre of land was gifted to them, and that was used for the cemetery that is currently there at Providence Baptist Church.
Again, and I'm just operating like where, what I've heard from neighbors. But what I understand is also in like 2008-ish, the Wickham family deeded land that then ended up being developed into the Hickory Hill like suburb kind of
development, right?
Is that correct?
Correct. That is correct. And they then sold the big house, and that was renovated and then sold again to another individual who lives there today. The homes, though, that the individuals living in them, I don't know what the price points are, but they're very expensive. Yeah, but was there like a first-time home buyers program offered to the descendant communities that lay adjacent to that? No, not that I'm aware of. No such discussion.
Very helpful. Thank you.
I got a question.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Kermit Billy. So I read a lot of certain author named Cynthia Hartman. I'm not sure you've heard of her, but she does a lot of work like you do with the archive. And her journey was more about like tracing it back all the way to Africa and coming to a kind of conclusion that like it wasn't sort of the catharsis she was expecting. You know, it was actually pretty painful for her. That's true for a lot of people. You know, you get through that 1870 brick wall and you find, you know, a lot of horror, a lot of terrible things. So her intervention against that is sort of like to write against the archive, to like, you know, because I think a lot of the records are, if not all of them, are in some ways either encounters with the state or encounters with former owners, right, or their families. So like obviously these people had lives that were beyond just their status as slaves and so forth. So her work is all really about like filling in those gaps, even if it's like in some ways what she calls fabulation, right? So like, what do you make of this this need to like, in order to sort of like, you know, hold the horror and trauma of that history, of like, you know, writing back against that and like, you know, helping to like fill in the actual humanity of people that were treated otherwise as property. I'm sorry, it's a really big question, but
Okay. Um, now, I do believe that the history needs to be preserved. Absolutely, no doubt about it. Um, I do believe that if you are a descendant of chattel slavery, that you should work to uncover your family's respective history, both matriarchal and patriarchal. Um, uh, now, are you asking, do I believe at maybe like the state or county level, even possibly the federal government one day will do more work in the space of more preservation? Um,
no, it's more about like how you advise people to. I mean, the records are all like, you know, like records of births and deaths and census records and arrest records, escape records, things like that. So it's all some sort of, in some ways, just only about where the state, and by the state I mean the government broadly speaking, is tracking them, right? But people's lives are a lot
right.
more than numbers. So, what would you advise people to do in terms of trying to fill in those actual stories of people that are, I guess, somewhat lost? So it's not just a ledger of these encounters, but more of an actual fully fleshed out human history of their families and so forth. If you have any ideas about that.
Um, Now, what I would say is this: when you get to that 1870 brick wall, the best advice that I can give is for an individual to start immediately studying the family in which you were enslaved. You would want to start, if available, if those records are available, and more than often they are, you would want to start looking over that family's fiduciaries papers. You want to look over their wills. You want to look over just any type of of information that is provided, right? Whether it will come through the historical society or if the family was generous enough to provide that information online, you would want to start there because in those records would be names of the enslaved, appraisements, inventories, and again, you'll be able to trace your family, possibly dismantling that 1870 brick wall. Like, for instance, the group at Hickory Hill, we have dismantled that 1870 brick wall. I mean, wow, that wall had some of those individuals have been traced all the way back to where they came from, respectively, in East Africa. Now, there are a bulk of slaves that were at Hickory Hill and at Shirley who were not from Africa, but were indigenous to America. They were less slave, more prisoner of war. Some were able to sue and gain freedom, and others remained enslaved until emancipation.
Thank you.
Sure.
I was wondering about the data center that would be created on Hickory Hill.
Sure.
With that, sorry. Oh,
Sure.
sorry. Include the names of the plantation owners, and also, I don't know if I misunderstood, but I think the Wickham family donated land to Black communities. If that is correct, then I wonder if you know how people kind of took that when it happened. Like, how did the white people surrounding them and that family, how did they respond?
Okay, so great question. I'm unaware if they gifted. I do know that there was a land exchange, and I believe that that was the settlement that we know, the club, the Hickory Hill Club. As far as the data center is concerned, that data center is again the former Blenheim or Poplar Springs plantation. Present day, the only thing that remains on that site is a cemetery. It's a Blenheim cemetery for the family, the Winston family. So the Winston family, Brickerton, Philip Brickerton Winston, his father, mother, brother, sister, children, they're all there. In addition to that, there is a slave cemetery there. No preservation work has been done on that space. Let me see if I can share my screen with you guys. Just give me a moment. I can open up a map and show you a visual of exactly where it is. Just give me a moment. I need to open up my notes because I know I have some GPS coordinates here. See if I'm able to open it up. I don't know if are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. This coordinate right here that you see pinpointed, that is the Hickory Hill slave plantation. Give me one moment. I'm going to open up. I don't even need the coordinate. It's right here. This right here is the Poplar Springs of Blenheim slave plantation. This is, I know the data center is supposed to be being built on this land somewhere, but I'm not exactly sure where. But this parcel here, this is the Winston Slave Cemetery right here. Okay. So yeah. I hope you all were able to see that visual.
Yeah, we saw it. Yeah, thank you. I know, Jocelyn, that I know you were kind of recovering from some stuff and wanted to rest. So
Yes.
I think if people are down, we can wrap up. Is there
All
is
right.
there
All right.
that you wanted to share or any final questions or thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, just a quick clarifying question. I got the sense that maybe tell me your name again. Nate. I think Nate assumed that the data center was related to the work of storing ancestral records, but is it that or just a data center in general?
From my understanding, there's a new data center that was just approved to be built on the tract of land where the former Poplar Springs or Blenheim plantation is. That was the tract where I just showed where the slave cemetery of that plantation is. So I don't have the map in front of me. I have seen it though, of the data center and where it's going to be built. I don't know if that map overlaps this slave cemetery. I don't know. I'm not aware of, again, any preservation work that is currently being done in that space. But I am aware that it is a slave cemetery there. It is also notated online.
Well, my question was just that, but the data center has nothing to do with records of slaves, right? It's just a generic data center. It's not doing any work to support that, right? It's just its own thing.
I'm not. Yeah. Okay. So if it's being built to do any, I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of. I have not personally attended any of the meetings in Hanover. So I'm not sure exactly what the plans of the data center are. That's actually a great question, and I will go look into that when we wrap up today. Now, may I ask you all, are any of you aware of exactly what the plans of the data center is? Have you heard by chance?
To Ellen again. It's already been approved and they're already building it, and it's going to be a huge monstrosity that's just drawing a lot of electricity and clearing a lot of land just to one of those giant data centers.
Oh, it's a server.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not. I was thinking a museum or something.
It's not good.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Now, I am not in Hanover again. If anything, I could do again or speak on is the history, right? Again, I would. The information is available again online that there is a slave cemetery on that space. I would have to go and compare their map to see exactly where the layout is going to be. And I have not heard of any preservation work being done for the slaves of that space. But I am aware of some of the slaves of Poplar Springs, Blenheim Plantation, yes.
Had you heard of the Wegmans Center that went in a historically Black community nearby over at Slash Church?
Brown Grove, yes, I am aware of that as well.
It was approved at the state level, so
there's
locally.
It seems to be something that's happening right now. I know a group of descendants, my family, we've received some letters. And we're talking to have meetings again so that I am able to speak to them like I am to you all, but in person about the history of the land for those who are unaware of the space. I know that the entire state of Virginia is pretty much a cemetery, as my grandmother would say. It was the bed of everything, every war, even the beginning of colonization, everything. So to build on top of land, work should be done again to ensure that space, one, has no human remains, understanding the history of the space, and the descendant community, because from the history of what I've done around Hanover County, all of these plantations have descendant communities within our arm's reach that are still there today, present day.
Could you spell the name Wickham for me? I want to just make sure I have the right name.
Wickham, Wickham. Wickham.
Thank you.
The original was William Fanning Wickham. His brother was Edmund Fanning Wickham, I believe, of Rocky Mills. He also had a son named Williams Carter Wickham, who was the president of, I believe, the C&O Railroad, and he did a lot of work. He was he had a statue that was downtown Richmond. They had a train that was built, and they had a stop specifically built for Wickham Plantation to carry goods into Richmond.
Is the
That
family
that railroad was built by former slaves. Say that again.
is the family still living in Richmond? I have a coworker with that exact last name, and yeah.
So yeah, so their descendants are probably in and around all over Virginia. I'm pretty certain of it. Absolutely, they were a big family. Now, when it comes to the Wickham family, their father was John Wickham, of the Valentine House in Richmond, Virginia. I'm not sure if you know or ever heard of the Valentine Museum, but that was the Wickham brothers' father. Their wives, though, were Carter sisters from Shirley Plantation. They were the descendants of Robert King Carter, probably the biggest landowner ever in the history of the state of Virginia.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Just a second.
Real quick.
All right.
Your local meteorologist. Very sudden, unexpected thunderstorm. It is about to hit in about 15 minutes. Oh, it's good. I just wanted to definitely let people know who are camping. If you don't have a rain fly, I think right now would be a good time to set it up. If you have a rain fly but it's not set up, that would be a good time. If you don't have a rain fly, I know Mason needs one. Does anyone else need a rain fly?
Jocelyn, I think we're gonna wrap up. I don't know if you heard, but we're gonna have a storm in like 10 minutes, so we're gonna try moving everything inside and.
Oh wow. All right. All right. Well, I thank you all so very much for the opportunity to speak this evening. I hope that you all have had a wonderful event today, gathered. And I look forward to coming down to Hanover County again very soon. And I look forward to, of course, seeing you all when I come.
We're so excited to see you in person and hang out with you. So just looking forward to it.
All right. All right. Good evening to everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.